Hello and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to customize this Fall Guys figure. My friend got me this figure. It was like very lonely on the shelf and the packaging was damaged, but it looks very cute. But it's not my main figure that I usually play in Fall Guys. I have like two figures that I really like to play, and surprise surprise, one of them is the fox. So I thought, since that is my main character that I usually play, I'm going to actually make the fox. But here you can see it comes with like a little collector's guide. And you have all these really cute creatures. Love the wolf, love that we have one of the golden ones that you get when you have collected enough like wins, crown points and stuff. Definitely a very good selection for like the base of Fall Guys, like for some of the OG fun customs. And I really love the colors they chose here, and we have the cutest of the roughly details, but sadly they need to go. I've been playing Fall Guys a lot before, like almost daily for like a couple of years, but like at some point, recently I have stopped and I only occasionally play with friends, but it's still a very fun game, and like I love the creator levels, they're a lot of fun too. I love the quest that you get daily and stuff. I think it's a definite lot of fun if you want like small, like almost mindless game. Obviously if you want to win you need a bit more practice, but I always had a lot of fun with it, especially playing with my friends. But yeah, after I cut off all the rainbow details, I chucked them in a box to maybe keep for another project later. And then I just shaved everything down and it was time for some epoxy sculpt. As I said, one of my favorites is the fox. So that is what I'm going with, the classic fox suit. So I need to bulk out everything a little bit since the fox is essentially like a two-part suit that you're covered in, and those are a bit more chunky than the standard Fall Guys base. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just using my epoxy and starting off with the base because I knew that the head would take a little bit more refining since I needed to sculpt there. I just went in, over the feet, covered a little bit of the like straps that the shoes have, just to blend things in and all that kind of stuff. And then I just add like a little bit more volume on the head, and you can see, I don't know if it does much, but like I found that it's a little bit easier to work with if like I work in sections. If I put my epoxy sculpt into a wet paper towel, just like wrap it up a little bit to keep it a little bit more like humid and soft. Like of course in the long run it's gonna harden because it's gonna react with the other part that you mixed in, since it's a two-part epoxy like clay. But I find that just at least the surface doesn't dry out when you do that, and it blends a bit better. I did let the first layer dry a little bit and harden a little bit, but it's still like slightly indentable, but it shouldn't like move or anything before I moved on with the second layer, which was way more bulking out of the head and a lot more of the details. I don't think I can like replicate it perfectly, but I also don't really mind to give it like a tiny bit of my own flair. Like I always think that just copying projects, like if you do it in your own style and it looks great, I think that's better than when you just copy the exact style. I don't know, I mean if you're really good at copying stuff, it could also, if that's your style, could also be really cool, but I really like if things have like my own little style in a way. So, I don't mind if it's a little bit uneven or like not perfect matching with the original. But yeah, here I'm making like the side whiskers of the fox. I'm just rolling out these like little sausages, tapering them on one end, one small and one larger, and I stack them on top of each other, blend them in, and then I put them onto the figure. This is like the beard or the side hair or whatever you want to call it. And, gives kind of almost Lorex vibes. But we're gonna ignore that. I'm blending everything in with water. Epoxy sculpt is like super blendable with water, so that is what I'm using here to smooth it. And then I'm also using my silicone tools to blend in all of the edges here. The snout was first after the like little beard section, so I'm blending that in quite a lot. And then I also like engraven nose a little bit. I'm also going to add ears and eyes and all that kind of stuff. You know, all the things that make out the costume. Next up, it was time to actually make the like little face shape. Because it is a suit with a cutout face, I, left like a little bit more of a gap there and like made the like face be like a little bit more indented. I didn't want to sculpt a new face. I thought the face was pretty much perfect. So I just did the same thing that the custom did and just, leave the rounded out part here. I could have totally made this be like just a fox, and I was debating it for a little while, so that like the eyes of the Fall Guys are covered, but I was like, the game has it, and I really think the game design is cute, so I wanted to keep like the Fall Guys essence. But yeah, I let parts like dry again just a little bit, especially on the head, so I wouldn't like bump into things. And then I added the ears. Just very simple, just some like tapered triangles with a flat side. I guess they're more like cones, and then I used my silicone shaper once again to indent the ears a little. These turned out really chunky, but I think they are super cute. And then I added the eyes and eyebrows and the little like oval tuft of hair on the head, and sadly my camera cut out there so you guys won't be able to see it, but essentially they were all just balls of clay that I like pressed flat and shaped a little bit, and that's all. And then with the rest of the clay I had, at this point it was a bit hardened, I added a tail. The tail didn't stick, I did have to like glue it back on with super glue, but that's the nature of epoxy, it tends to like harden and then just not stick to itself anymore, but just a drop of glue really helps it, and it's actually very sturdy with that, so I wasn't worried about the tail falling off anymore after. I did add some of these like lines that they have on the belly to like mark off the section between belly and body, and this only worked because the clay still was a little bit soft, but I went in with my ball stylus and like essentially engraved it. And here it is fully dry, so I sand and shave things down a little bit to make it look smoother. And then it's paint time, starting out with a whiter base just to give everything an even coat, including the face. I like to always start out with my lighter colors. And then it's time to go in with the creams and oranges. This custom is like very simple in color, except for it has some fur texture that I wanna try and add like randomly a tiny bit later. But yeah, first I'm like kind of laying out the sections of color that there are, because like especially in the face there's no separation line. We have a separation line on the belly, but like for the face, I just wanted to make sure that everything's placed right. So I went in with the sand color, and these are model paints from Vallejo. I really like them. This color is called Buff, and it's like, for me, it's like this perfect creamy sand color in my opinion. And then I went in with this really pretty vibrant orange. I knew that I would tone them down just a tiny bit later, but I really like this vibrant color. It's like so warm and so nice. And yes, the custom itself doesn't look this vibrant in the game, but my costume, my rules, so that's what I went with. And then for the texture, I used a really dry brush, mixed in a tiny bit of like brown into my orange, and I stippled it on to give it like this furry like variation texture, because like in the game they also added like a fur texture where like parts are a little bit darker, and I think it just looks really nice and a little bit more dimensional, so that's what I did. I did have to repaint the cream parts, but I kind of expected that, and it was totally fine, it wasn't that much, and at least I had like the base of where they went. And very, very simple custom. Just a little bit of back and forth, adding the details in like the ears, on the tip of the tail, and they have like darker brown on the tip of the ears and the hands as well. And then one thing I didn't show before that I also did is I used a sanding stick and like made some V-shaped indents into the foot part so it looks like, you know, like paws. Sadly, again, that was in a part where my camera cut out, but it was super simple. I just literally used my sanding stick and sanded the V shapes down in there. And they will also be painted separately. Just like a real fox, just very stylized. And I think it looks so cute and bubbly and soft. So I try to kind of replicate that with my shapes too, and I really like how chunky it looks. As for the eyes, we already, as I said, had a perfect face mold, so I chose to go with just orange eyes that would still pop out where they were, especially with the white face base, but also like would really fit with the body. I also did the like speckling technique with like a darker brown in my paint on the belly. Just had to be a bit more careful that I don't go onto the orange parts, and then I just painted in the rest of the brown tones in multiple layers. I used my heat gun in between to dry things, and by the end I was actually super happy with how things turned out. Also, dare I say, these figures have excellent hand sculpting. I love the hands in these figures. Like, in general, these figures are so cute, they sculpt. I really like them. They're very small, but I think they capture like this bubbliness that Fall Guys have perfectly. I was so happy when I finally got to add in all the facial details, because I think they brought the figure like really to life. I think it looked excellent after I added all those. And then, as always, I'm going to spray this with some matte varnish. Added 2 coats here and it worked out really well. Also extra bonus points for the base holding up so well, because in certain detailed parts where I had a hard time holding the figure and painting, I plopped it onto the base and it worked excellent. But yeah, here you can see the finished figure and I am so happy. I love the original pose, so I kept that, and I love how the hand essentially holds onto the costume a little bit. Maybe in running, because you know these costumes would be like stuffed and a little bit heavy. Maybe it's wobbling a little bit, maybe it wants to support it, and I really love that. I also really love this color combination. I think it turned out super cute, and I love the cute face. As I said, I had lots of fun making this. This was such a joy, and I'm so happy to have like a small figure that has my costume and like, you know, a little bit more of my personal style details. And as always, let me know in the comments down below what you thought of this costume, and have you ever played Fall Guys and which of the costumes is your default? I already mentioned that this one is one of my default. I also really like the axolotl, also really love the bat and the potion wizard. Those are like my top ones, I have to say. But I think like even the fish and stuff are so fun to wear, and I love the weird SpongeBob characters that we got into. And as always, I hope you have a great day. See you next time. Bye bye!